Hi, you're here today with us on the SayoStudio Science Podcast. You've got Claire and myself, Nicolle, and we are excited to talk to you all today.
We're so excited to be on again on our 11th podcast episode. We're both very proud of that. And we today are talking about how to balance creativity with admin, grow a purpose-driven studio, and give scientists the design tools they need to create impactful figures. So, yeah, how can we make research shine and give value to scientists sharing their science? That's our big question today.
Do we
Yeah,
want to keep talking about cover art?
I don't know, whatever you want to do. That's all my head. That's where my brain is 100%. But
Yeah.
I can switch tracks if we need to.
Well, that's funny since you're talking about a train metaphor, switching
There
tracks.
we go. See, I'm in it. I'm committed. I'm living the metaphor.
Yeah. No, but I wouldn't mind talking about that. I have one more thought about the train metaphor we were just
Mhm.
talking about before we
Go
hit
on.
record.
Uh-huh.
But, I'd also like to talk about that today, maybe just how hard it is to shift gears when you're trying to manage a creative business between actually doing the art and being in it and,
Oh,
um, making sure projects get managed efficiently, emails get sent off, all that good stuff. But
it's so hard. That switch is so hard. And I can see myself getting stuck. Like it's obvious. Like I'm stuck in one or the other. Like today before getting into art, like I had sent off another piece of art and then I was like, okay, project management time. This is here now. There's new emails in. This is feedback here. And then I'm just like clicking back and forth between chat and ClickUp. Like because my brain can't stop and I can't move on to the next art project.
yeah. And that's something where I can't figure out if this is just a me thing or if this is how everybody is, but, some days one thing works better than the other, which sometimes works well because sometimes I'm just in the mood to do one of those things and it needs to get done and it's great. The problem is when I'm not in the mood to do one of those things and I really have to, and my brain
Mhm.
keeps trying to distract me and bring me back to the thing that should not be a priority at this given moment.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. And then how, like, when that happens, you're like, "Well, this is all really important, and, like, there's wiggle room here, and, like, what I'm doing is still necessary."
yeah. Yeah, and if I'm
Mm.
doing this, like if this is the thing that I am like, just jamming on right now and it's working well, should I just ride that wave, get it out of my system, be efficient in this space since I know I'm not gonna be efficient in this other one right now.
Exactly,
But,
exactly. It's so tough. And then we've been
yeah.
so busy that there's this, like, heightened sense to it all of,
Mhm.
like, I need to be checking things off constantly. And so then there's just kind of a mania that happens, and it all
Yeah.
feels more chaotic.
And I'm sure this is true for, like, any given industry. Like, there's the tasks that you have to do, just, like, day-to-day tasks, and then there's the more but I feel like somehow it's different for creative work, like, it's hard to get in that zone sometimes, and I think that's one thing, like, as we're trying to schedule out projects and try to communicate with potential clients and our current clients, like, sometimes the actual work might take 12 hours, but, like, finding the space for that to make sure we're in the right place isn't always easy when you're juggling a lot of different things, and so making sure that we have that kind of buffer room, um, is
Yeah,
something that I think we're getting better at putting in the schedule, but there's always room for improvement, I think, so,
I
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, like, it us being in the creative space and feeling like it's especially hard, whether or not that's the case. Um, I I think it is. I would agree because it literally feels like switching from, like, one hemisphere of your brain to the other. 'Cause the business management side of things is so right-brained,
Right, I think it's left
organized,
brain.
left-brained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because 'cause you're still in the right brain zone, so you're thinking about right
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so I can't imagine that, if you're always staying on one side of your brain, I that has to be easier, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. But, I mean, I should say that that's one place where, there's definitely been challenges to try to grow a team, but that's one place, having somebody like Angela who does our business work, it's made that part a lot smoother because
Mhm,
before, I would get hung up and like, "Okay, I need to double check that invoice to make sure that I had all the I's dotted," and so,
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier, that can feel really good sometimes. It's like, "Oh, I'm breezing through these proposals, I'm getting all these emails sorted, and I have a deadline that's past its due date." Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But um poor Philip is really gonna have to edit this one. Um, I feel good that I got off, the You Mish, proposal graphic this morning, and I'm happy
Mhm.
about it, and I'm excited for feedback, and I feel like it'll be really close, so that, um, was encouraging to jump into more art. It just feels so good when you get them off and
Mhm.
and you've been time efficient, and you're happy with the final product.
Yeah.
So that felt good this morning.
And I think that's something that, most of the time works out the way we want it to work out, that because we do put a lot of time into the sketch part, by the time we do the color art, I don't wanna jinx anything, but most of the time, like, we can feel good about it because 'cause we're pretty solid on the content about what we did because 'cause we've cleared that by doing a sketch first.
Mhm.
Um, so
Definitely. Like, I love going in to color art with a template, and it's truly a template, and, they've come back with like, "Oh, I love this, here, can we just fudge this a little?" But at the end of the day, it's truly a template, and you can just go in and,
yeah.
make it pretty. So that yeah, that concept dev part is so fun and so challenging and makes everything else easier.
Yeah. That made me think of 2 things. It made me think of the big project that I worked on recently for a new client
Mhm.
that was a lot more anxiety riddled. Um, and then also, if we can think to come back to it, just about how kind of leading a team, we've started to realize that you and I need to do a little bit more concept development when we have freelance artists come in. And it's not because they're not capable, but especially if we're not working with them often, we have a certain way that we do things and think through things. And so I think that's an area, like as we're growing our studio, that we're realizing we need to invest the time in early.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's been interesting.
Mhm. And that piece is really exciting. I think it'll be fun to talk about, the new client project that you just mentioned, but yeah,
Yeah.
to come back to kind of us sticking around in concept development, that's really exciting. I think that's where we stand out in general, and so it makes so much
Mhm.
sense. Um
Yeah.
But there's also challenges, like the project briefing and the time that goes into that once the concept is developed, and streamlining those pieces with freelancers we work with or new freelancers, and so there's always new hurdles, even if it's
Yeah.
logical.
Yeah, and that's actually an area, I think we have kind of a broad spectrum of listeners from scientists to other artists, and
Mhm.
so if anybody out there is an artist, designer listening, I'd love to hear what you all think because I I think part of the reason why I shied away from it from the beginning was partially because of the time commitment on our end that you were talking about. But then also I wanna give people that creative freedom. Um, but yeah, the more I've done this, I realize, like, sometimes there can be too much creative freedom, and you definitely have to give some guidance. And I think I forget that I've been doing this for, like 20 years.
Mhm.
And so, I forget that that can be helpful. And that doesn't mean that people can't say, well, okay, you said this, and I see where you're going, but what about this? I think people can still um, give suggestions outside of what we say we want. So,
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, and, you and I have both worked from our each other's sketches, obviously our
mhm,
own sketches, but, like, thinking about working from each other's sketches, there's still so much creativity that goes into it
yeah.
and ownership. Personally, that's how I feel. But I'm curious, yeah, how other artists feel. I feel like sometimes I have a fear going to ask other artists to bring a concept to life because
hmm
there could be a lack of ownership, but then I don't feel that way, so sometimes I'm like, "Why am I worried about that?" Yeah, I'm curious what art other artists think of
Yeah.
working from a developed concept. Um, but yeah, I know that, like, you've given me sketches, and that's some of the art I'm proudest of too at the end of the day. So, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think we both feel similar in regards to pulling artists in at that stage.
hmm Yeah. Um, And, this is another thing, this is a total tangent. I can hear my son rollerblading in the background, so if there's any weird bangs, that's why, I apologize. We could talk about work-life balance perhaps. But, yeah, coming back to, developing the concept, and that other project I was talking about, I don't know. I feel like is it too early to talk about who the client is? I don't know. I think I can talk generally.
I
It's
think
just
so.
it was a new client, and it ended up being much more of a rush than we planned. And so we did the sketch, but the sketch was very simple. It was kind of showing a network. And so a lot of the interest needed to come from the style. And so that often isn't conveyed in a sketch necessarily. And we have a lot of artwork that is kind of similar, but for this one, they wanted something that was more kind of, um, clean. I hate using the word modern because there's so many different uses of the word modern, but very clean and modern and, flat colors, and that's what I thought, but then I got, um, I don't know, just anyway, that was really stressful sending it to them because I was really unsure of what they wanted for style, and if we'd had more time, we would have sent them style boards and really clarified that aspect of it, but, yeah, anyway, so it all
Oh.
turned out well in the end, so I was very happy with that, but it was a little bit, nerve-wracking because the first route that I went wasn't what they were thinking, and somehow I knew that somehow, but there were, like, a couple different groups that were giving feedback, so I listened to one more than the other, anyway, so glad it turned out well, and that the I guess that's one thing that is, helpful to put out there for scientists and such, like, if you're working with a good visual designer, artist, like, talk to them, and usually they should be able to, correct what you're not feeling, what isn't jiving for you.
Mhm.
So in this instance, the clients were really good about that, and we were able to get it to a place they were excited about.
Yes. In the end, everything worked out so well, which obviously is, the most important the most we could wish for. But those hangups are so hard, and I don't wanna say that I don't wanna sound cocky saying this or yeah, too overly confident, but when that does happen, I don't think that happens often. I think we've worked with researchers and scientists so often that we have our process so thoroughly developed that we don't come across that very often, and that's hard. I think at the end of the day, we do everything to avoid that.
Yeah,
And
that's very true, and I think that that's like, just discussing this right now, we're always trying to in these rare instances where things don't go quite as smoothly as planned, we try to troubleshoot why, and if there's something that we could have done differently, some step in the process that we could have communicated better,
uh-huh.
and sometimes we just have to accept that there were like, I think in this instance, there were both. Like,
Mhm,
there were places where I could have asked more questions, we could have asked more questions, but on the other hand, it really was just such a rush and a brand new client. I think working with this specific group again, now we'll be more clear on, um, yeah, what they like, what they
mhm,
want,
mhm.
um, and
And
I
like you
think they'll understand better, what information they need to give us, so,
mhm.
yeah.
And like you said earlier, a big group of or a big collection of input and how that can be presented to us by the client in the future. And that's always hard, um, especially for bigger organizations. Like I can fault no one for that.
Mhm,
Um, yeah. But I don't know, this is fun to do live because I think this is the reason why our process really feels so solid and we don't come across these bumps in the road very often because we do take the time to sit down and say, where did we need to jump in?
mhm,
You know, when was, this clarifying email needed and why did we overlook it? And we've had this conversation many, many times over the years.
mhm. Yeah, and that reminds me of the, podcast that we just had recently where we had Ashley Hackett on to talk about, her role and her firing, sadly, from NIH.
Mhm,
So definitely check out that episode because it was very interesting. But my point is, is that we talked a lot about how science communication, whether you're a science writer like she is, or doing visuals like we do, that it's really about translation. And I feel like a lot of the time we're pretty good at kind of almost reading between the lines.
mhm,
Like sometimes people say things like, sometimes people give us specific feedback, like, "I really want this to be this color and this color," but then it turns out it doesn't necessarily have to be that color, they're just responding to the fact that the contrast isn't enough, and we've been staring at it too long and have missed that. So, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. The translation part is huge. Um, I think we're often almost most of the time, I would say, told something, and it means something totally different, but we can hear it and be like, "We got you. We know what
Yeah.
what is needed here,"
Uh-huh.
and it feels good. That feels like a superpower. Like,
Yeah.
when you do that, and at the end of the day, there's no it's like, "Love it. This is great." You're like, "Yep. Yes." Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. That's funny. What did we wanna elaborate more on the concept dev piece?
I don't know. My mind is a blank. Do you have more thoughts on it?
I don't know. I think
Oh, I know what we could talk about. You tell me what you're thinking, and then I'll
I was just thinking how it lends itself to growth, studio growth, agency
Mhm.
growth, whatever you wanna call it. Um, you know, the pros and cons, the payoffs, challenges of, having freelancers step in, how to do that, what to pass off,
Mhm.
all of those questions.
Yeah. Oop,
Um,
sorry. My
what
phone
were you
is ringing.
thinking?
Just one second. I've gotta figure out how to turn my ringer off when we're in the middle of this. Um, yeah, and so what I was thinking was how I think the other thing that we've done, so we've had, as you mentioned earlier, we've been finishing off some figures for proposals. Um, and so I think that's been an interesting exercise because we've been doing a little bit more of them recently. And I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's almost like if you're doing cover art or of a proposal figure, the end result looks very different. And I think that's something that, because we're kind of in like the let's create this master art piece that we hope everybody is going to love and get a journal cover. Um, that it's been kind of a fun realization that we can also do a figure that is nicely designed and has a lot of impact to help scientists get funding,
Mhm.
basically. And that it doesn't have to be as fully rendered and drawn and done in 3D, and it can use more um, icons and symbols and graphics.
Mhm.
But the concept development itself, I would say that, I don't know, what do you think? I would say that there's just as much work that goes into it, especially for things like kind of career grants where people are trying to explain the entire trajectory of what they
Yeah.
hope to accomplish.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think that's what let me try and put my thoughts the concept development feels just as much as of a lift, and it also feels like that's the only way I feel good about producing kind of a lower lift as far as, like, style and pizzazz at the end of the day of what you're looking at. Like, the only way I can justify that is if I know it is communicating, you know, the researcher's career goals or the proposal, the research itself for the proposal they're writing in a way that is, unique and true to our strength as a studio.
Mhm.
So, that's been hard because, on the from a client's perspective, potentially coming to us for proposal graphics, it's like, "This is kinda low lift, we don't need it to be so pretty."
Mhm.
But I think what we've settled on, and tell me if you agree, is, like, if there's not space in the budget for that concept dev that's so important to us and makes this, stand out from everyone else doing proposal graphics or the proposal graphics that already exist,
Mhm.
then it's not something, like, we feel comfortable standing behind, almost. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I think it does make sense. And I think, and this is where you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's um kind of led to another tier of services. So we're trying to offer more consulting services and also just education series. So we're starting our next webinar. So by the time this airs, we'll have had our first webinar. So we hope that is a fantastic success. But as of right now, it'll be next week. And so the reason for that is because, like you said, like we're, well, you didn't quite say this part, but we're not cheap, and that's because we put a lot of work into the concept part. And so there's going to be scientists who can't afford us, or, like maybe for this one project, They need to use their funds elsewhere, and especially, as we've talked about before with funding crisis in science. So we want to help give tips. And so this kind of rambling answer is getting around to the idea. So yes, we do the concept part. And then I think we've also kind of started to realize that even if the graphic feels, I'm hitting my mic, um, even if the graphic feels more simple compared to a lot of the artwork we do, there's so much, design expertise that we don't even realize that we have anymore that can be taught to, a scientist just about, like, simple rules of not rules, I don't like the word rules, but tips on layout and spacing and emphasis, and so that's where we're hoping that we can help give tips to scientists so that if they're not in a position for us to do the lifting of the concept development, maybe they don't need that, they can help use these design tips to make their figures more clean and readable and stand out. So,
That was the perfect segue. That made total sense. And yes, thank you for explicitly saying what I did not say, which is we are not cheap. Um, and hopefully we're providing value uh,
yes.
to give scientists the tools to put out figures that really stand out just because they're following the right rules of design.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm really excited for the webinar. Do we wanna talk about that at all?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're excited. No, I'm excited too. I'm just nervous because this is a new area for us, but I'm excited too. And the response that we've gotten so far is fantastic. We're getting close to about 100 attendees, which is, I think, incredible for our first one. Um, yeah. So this first one, shall I just describe what our first one is going to be about?
Yeah,
And like,
yeah,
so our first one is, I think is more of an introduction to graphic design, and so we're just going to be talking about how really the goal is to emphasize the important points, the important parts of your data, of your figure, and how to do that by, giving things breathing room and spacing, making sure that things aren't cluttered, and that goes into the spacing parts. And, what else? We have it more clearly laid out in the presentation, but, uh, yeah, also just, kind of the basics of hierarchy that if you want something to stand out, you need it to be bigger, you need to use, brighter colors, stronger contrast, all those good things that I think all of you listening, whether or not you're a designer, you're probably like, "Yeah, that makes sense." But it doesn't mean that it's applied, and if you look at a lot of figures out there, it's really not applied. And there's a lot of simple things you can do to make your figures cleaner, just like a lot of times people put unnecessary lines around things. I don't know why, and I say that partially because I'm trying to remember, did I add extra lines? I don't think I added extra lines, but I add extra boxes around something that I was doing last week, and you told me that it looked kinda funky, and I've been working on it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't wanna hear feedback right now. I just wanna be done with this." And I took a look at it, and I'm like, "Wait a second, these boxes don't need to be here. They're just cluttering stuff." And so that's kind of the message we're trying to get across in this first one.
mhm. Yes, and as our fellow artists and designers know, there's so much information that in this realm, but Nicole, you
Mhm.
said something that I really liked, that we want it to be really concise and applicable, so everyone listening walks away with, 5 things that they're like, "I'm gonna make a checklist every time I do a figure from now on."
Yeah.
So that's the goal, and Nicole, I'm curious, like, about the work that's gone into making this webinar a thing. So the presentation
Yeah.
and the research, that's what I wanna hear about from you, because I think listeners, whether, they're scientists, and please let us know, whoever's listening, all of you who are listening,
Mhm.
let us know, but, yeah, scientists and artists alike, I think could be really interested in doing webinars themselves and
Yeah.
what that lift looks like.
That is a great question, and it's something, so we've been talking about doing a webinar for a while. I don't know how long, maybe 2 years, 3 years?
Mhm.
Um, and so we haven't done it up until now, partially because of time and energy and resources, and partly just because I didn't feel confident enough to do it, and so I think that's a whole maybe another discussion for another day, but the whole imposter syndrome thing. Um, and so right now, we decided that we would try focusing on this, and so we've had our business development guru, Amanda, working on this. So she's gone ahead and she's, almost put together a lesson plan of the key things that we wanna focus on and talking points, and then we have our graphic designer who put together the entire presentation, and then I've been working through the actual, like, figures of things that I wanna explain, um and like you said earlier, I'm trying to keep it really simple and concise to the point that people might might be like, "What am I looking at here?" But hopefully with the explanation, I can make it applicable. Um,
S
yeah, and I feel like this is also the tip of the iceberg. So through doing this, I've tried to look up to see what others are doing, and what resources are out there so that I can share that, and there's a lot out there, and, that's one of the things that I wanna do is kind of help collate all of that stuff out there and provide some of that information to links, so, if you all know of resources, I would love to have them, but we have a lot, so I just need to, put those together in a way that's digestible for people, so it's things like places where you can get, free icons and images that you can use in your figures, everything from, like, a mouse to a test tube to a cell, molecules. So I want to do that, put all together that information, and then other artists and designers. There's a lot of books out there, and websites and YouTube stuff. So I think it all serves the larger picture. So I've found quite a few other artists who, well, I shouldn't say quite a few. I've found a few other artists that do more so tutorials in 3D programs like Blender. And that's something that we are currently not planning on providing. Um, but we've also been exploring other tools like Canva and how that could be useful and helpful to scientists rather than relying on things like PowerPoint.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'll stop talking so you can respond.
No, that's awesome. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was curious about. I I'm so excited for next week, and I'm excited for the recap too, and I don't know, I guess 2 points. Like, the practice of putting together a webinar,
Mhm,
where that leads us.
mhm.
You know, we have big goals of, creating community and creating, um, a SayoStudio Ye figure creation platform. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm just curious to see how much closer this gets us.
Mhm.
And I think that's important, or I think that's important to touch on because, you know, for anyone wanting to do a webinar in whatever your expertise is, like, I think that in itself is a reason to do it.
Yeah,
And then the
yeah.
other point, which we can go back to this, but my other point is, oh shoot. Oh, wait, no, it's gonna come to me. We can edit this out. Webinar, where it leads us. Oh, my other point is how the podcasts we've done and jumping into this endeavor of talking in front of a camera, feeling confident doing that, getting over imposter syndrome like you noted on, how that has potentially helped lead us here altogether.
Yes.
So those are the 2 points that
Yes.
I'd like to touch on.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. Uh, when I said imposters, like if you asked me a couple years ago, "Are you an expert in your field?" I would say, "Yes." But it didn't mean that I wanted to do the things to be recognized as an expert in my field and share that, and it wasn't that I didn't wanna share, it's just that you have to put yourself out there, and I don't love doing that, and so, definitely having this podcast has really made me feel more comfortable with that, and it's definitely made it easier if, anybody is considering doing it, having
Mhm.
a colleague that they can talk to, like with you, Claire, it's been made this so much more fun having this process where we can kinda have discussions. And then also I've loved having guests on, and that's been wonderful too. Okay, now I have to find my train of thought. Um, shoot. Okay, webinar. Shit. What was I talking about?
So imposter syndrome my 2 points were imposter syndrome, which you touched on, and what this has done for that, and then where the webinar will take us. Like, will it get us that much closer, just like as a practice of
Oh, I
putting
know
all
what
the
I was gonna
information
say.
together.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so the other thing, earlier I mentioned that I was nervous about the webinar coming up, and the funny thing is before I would have been very nervous about the physical act of being on a camera and talking to people, and doing this podcast has definitely gotten me past that. What I'm nervous about is that I am so grateful and appreciative of people's time, and I'm that's what makes me nervous, like, I really, really wanna give value to people, and I want, people to come away feeling like they've really learned something and it was worth their time, and so we have a great combination of both past clients as well as, kind of friends and colleagues that they've recommended us, to come to this webinar, and so I feel that pressure that, like, I need to really give something valuable for them giving up an hour of their time. Um, so I actually like the non-nervous side of me feels confident we can do that, but it doesn't mean that emotionally I'm not still nervous. But that being said, I think that I also am very appreciative that they're going to show up, and I hope that then they can really tell us what they wanna hear and that we can keep doing these and keep, refining what we're putting out there, to what people feel like would be helpful for them. And that's another thing for this podcast, I think that we would love to hear from listeners if there's certain parts that they like hearing more than others. So far we've had scientist guests, we've had science communicator guests, and then we've had time where you and I, Claire, are just talking. And I've really enjoyed doing all of it. But if there's something that resonates with people more than other, yeah, topics would be fun to hear. So,
Yeah, definitely. And what resource you talked about all the compiling all the resources and what we use and how we use it, and just something that popped in my head was, a really is there a resource in there that's a game changer, and do we explore that and how we use it more in depth? Um, Whether that's, screen sharing and giving you guys examples of us working or whatever it is. So, yeah, that's really exciting. And then you also mentioned, you know, the pressure of take of using people's time and you really wanting it to feel valuable. Um, and I think I I'll be there. I'm not presenting. You're presenting. I'll be answering questions. Um, so I think I can say this because I'm not presenting and I am I am not you. I'm an outsider looking in. But I think, colleagues being involved and being there and people who I know love you and respect you and have had so many good experiences working with you, will just create such a good atmosphere and for the people who are new and are getting to know our studio, really put them in a place of like, "Wow, this is great." People
Mhm.
really value what they do. So, I think that's all positive, and I think it's gonna go really well.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, and I think we're getting kind of to the tail end of our time, but I just wanted to touch on you've kind of come back to it a couple times, kind of like where is this leading us and where have
Well,
we been? And
the
um part of we talked a little bit about wanting to do this so that we can help give design tips to scientists and science organizations that for them to do it themselves and do a good job of it when they
Mhm,
need to design figures, design even like social media, all of that good stuff. Um, and it fits in our kind of overarching goal to be more strategic in the services we offer, and so kind of giving value to being able to help people see where visuals are useful, where design principles are useful, and help consulting from like the people that just need an hour of our time giving them tips to people who want us to really help with a full visual campaign across all of their media to make sure everything's consistent with their branding.
mhm,
Um,
nah,
yeah. So,
yeah,
and like you
that's
said, if you want to touch on just, the community aspect and trying to build community. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's what I had in mind when I said that. I think those have been our big long-term goals for a long time now, for I'd say over 2 years.
mhm,
Both, the consulting and the community slash, um, platform, figure building platform. Um, and I guess the only thing I can add is that this just so clearly feels like an exercise of realizing all of that, um, in trying to connect with the people it would serve, getting
mhm,
their feedback, organizing ourselves, seeing the lift it takes, how who we have involved, who's doing the graphic design, what that means for your time as far as input and edits, who we have doing the course prep and what that means for, our lift for refining it.
mhm.
Yeah. That's just I think that's
Yeah,
kind
and I
of
think that's the other part I wanted to touch on is, kind of getting back to what it takes to put something like this together well, at least, and I feel really fortunate that we have this team behind us, and so we've mentioned a lot of people, and so part of the reason why I've been able to do it is because you're busy managing and doing a lot of the art projects, and so I just wanted to put it I guess, 2 things. One, that this is the changing landscape of marketing. Like, if you'd asked me if I would ever be doing a podcast or webinars, I would not have expected this. Um, but this is kinda where marketing is going. Like, you're expected to have a presence giving voice to what you're an expert in now, I think, much more so. And so when you're starting out and you don't have this whole team behind you, It's of course going to be more challenging, but I definitely think one person could do it. Of course, if you're like juggling a lot of client work and still trying to kick this off, that's where it gets hard. And I think
Mhm.
that's where it's been a learning process for us as well, as
Mhm.
managing all these client projects and still also trying to move forward with these initiatives that we're excited about and that'll get us further to our goal
Mhm.
in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I feel like something I wish I had heard, and maybe I would've if I had paid more attention, or maybe I did hear it, but was, like, the stickiness getting going.
Uh-huh.
Like, I feel like just recently, it feels purposeful, it doesn't feel like a waste of time, it doesn't feel like a chore, but it
Mhm.
took a lot to get there. Even
Yes.
just, you know, so many podcasts or so many times of us getting together and deciding how we just press record, and then, when we were in, um, Santa Barbara visiting a client of ours, just a conversation of, "Oh, we need to capture the excitement of working with scientists by having them on and talking to them." And
Mhm.
none of that would have happened if we hadn't have gone through that sticky stage, and
That's true.
it didn't feel good being in that stage. It
Yeah.
felt like, "What have we done? How
Mhm.
much money have we put towards this?" Um,
Yeah.
and time, and so, yeah, I just think if I can just say, and it can help anyone, that that is super normal, and it makes sense that it's normal, but
Mhm.
it just doesn't feel good, and I for a little bit was like, "This maybe this isn't for us."
Yeah.
And I'm glad we didn't settle on that. I'm
Yes.
glad we didn't give up.
Yes, and I would like to say that this I pretty sure will be our 11th episode. Is that right? Which
Mhm.
I feel super proud of. I know other people who've been doing YouTube podcasts for a long time will be like, "What? That's nothing," but I'm
Mm,
proud of us.
yeah.
And part of that is, like, if you go back and look in our shared, like, Google Drives, how many Excel sheets and docs we have with, like, different lists of ideas of, "We can do an episode on this, and we can do an episode on that." And, I don't think they were bad ideas. They just weren't ideas that we were excited about, so we just never got into doing them. And so I think it just, yeah, it takes a while of forcing yourself to go through that and, toss out ideas.
I would
And, like, the ideas we toss out might be a great idea for somebody else, but we had to
would
find the ones that fit for us, and I think that's where it's hard is you listen to marketing gurus, and they kinda make it sound easy sometimes, like, this is the prescription, this is, like, what you do, you follow these and it's never a straight line, like, even if you're not a creative person, it's still not gonna be a straight line. So, yeah, we're
Yeah,
zigzaggy.
definitely. Um, definitely. It's just wild. It's wild looking at where we've been, where we've come. It's really exciting. I think, yeah, we're just hitting a stride, and it feels really good. And I encourage anyone listening to, um, just do it. Just press play, even if you feel like you sound stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right. We have had a nice, lovely chat. Thank you, Claire. And thank you to all of you listeners for joining us today. We love having you tune in. And we, again, appreciate your time.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone who's listening. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, SayoStudio Science, our podcast. You can listen to us on your favorite streaming platforms. You can watch us if you prefer to watch rather than just listen. If you have any input as far as what you would like to hear, please, please, please drop a comment below. We'll talk to you next time.